Perfect.
Okay, I think we're ready. The Mississippi Charter School Authorizer regular monthly board meeting is being held in the Authorizer Board office building via teleconference in accordance with state law, code section 25-41-5. Notice of this meeting was posted prior to the meeting in accordance with state law. The minutes of the meeting will be recorded. Moving to the announcement of the quorum, as I call your name, please state present and your location. Mr. Mark Baker.
Here, Brandon, Mississippi.
Ms. Jean Cook. Yeah. Mr. Don Henson.
I'm here, Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Thank you. Ms. Kimberly Remack.
I'm here and I'm from Olive Branch.
Thank you. Ms. Jennifer Whittier.
I'm here in Brookhaven, Mississippi.
And Ms. Carolyn Willis.
Here, Carrollton, Mississippi.
Thank you. We have a quorum and the regular monthly board meeting is called to order. The first item is our pledge of allegiance and the invocation. Those of us here will stand and face the flag. The rest of you can join in. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If everyone will bow your head, I will offer an invitation. Thank you, Lord, for bringing us together again to conduct the business of the school of this great state. Please help us with our decisions today that all we do is in your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion that we adopt this agenda.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Would you have them say who their name so that we can get their order? Who's making the motion and who's second?
Okay, I got you. Did you get that, those two, Jordan? Okay. Thank you. The motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Next, we'll look at the minutes from June 14th, regular monthly meeting. And let's go ahead and look at the performance and accountability meeting minutes as well as the applications committee meeting minutes for July 7th. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes? Does anybody see anything wrong with any of them?
So moved.
And was that Jennifer? Okay, second.
Kimberly Remack, second.
Thank you, Kimberly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, motion carries, and all of those minutes are approved as written. The next item is the chair report. I don't have anything for today, and after that, next is the executive director report. Dr. Carmen Shire.
Thank you, Chairman Billingsley. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Like I said earlier, we're trying this new thing with our phone and the Zoom at the same time. So if anybody has any problems, just send a note into the chat and Jordan will try to help us out there. Welcome to everybody and welcome to our guests. It is good to see people in person. It's been a long time since we've had people in person, and it's good to see you guys as well who are here via Zoom. Just a few things I want to point out that you find in your packet. As always, you'll reference the newsletter from July the 1st that has just general information provided to the schools, as well as articles, resources, references to grant options, grant opportunities, training opportunities, and so forth, as well as MDE reporting requirements and upcoming submissions that are required through Epicenter submissions. The second thing I just want to bring your attention to was also included in your board packet. That is a memo that went out to schools on June the 22nd. This memo is in response to the accounting manual and FETS reporting. That memo was vetted by our counsel, Holly Robertson, as well as Ms. Campbell and Ms. Johnson, both from the Department of Education. It simply reiterates the fact that schools are going to be held accountable for reporting the accounting codes and the chart of accounts with respect to such reporting for this year, clarifying in detail that this is in response to the peer recommendations, and then details out how that information must be collected by MDE in order for the information to go on up to USDE. So just wanted to share that with you as well. Mr. Billingsley received a copy of that, but wanted to make sure that all board members were included in that correspondence. So we're all busy planning now our back to school meeting for September. This meeting is in conjunction, as always, with the Department of Education, and it provides a really good opportunity for schools to engage face-to-face with those leaders from the department, get relevant updates and information from the leaders at the Department of Education. We also, as you know, have planned our school tours for board members who are able to join us on the 30th of September. I want to encourage all board members who are available for that event to be sure and join us for that. They'll be in Jackson. We'll tour 2 schools in Jackson on that day, and then come back to the office here for lunch and conversation. We've invited additional educational interested folks from the state, and we're getting a really good response from those folks. So expect it to be a good crowd, and looking forward to having all of you here to tour the schools. We're also gearing up for our capacity interviews with the applicants during the second week of August. It'll be in person this year. Last year we were here due to COVID online. And so those individual interviews for capacity interviews are not as effective online as they are in person. So we're really excited about the Schoolworks team coming here to engage in that, those capacity interviews with the applicants who are making it to stage 3. The post-CSP award training for our Revive Prep and CSP subrecipients for those funds, that was held on June 29th. I alluded to that last month, and all sub-grantees were invited to that training. We had just 2 schools that were in attendance. You have a copy of that training in your packet, and schools who did not attend that training will have access to that through the Google Share Drive. Schools have also received their final draft versions of the framework and companion documents with pending approval from the board today. The documents will be posted on our website for legal review throughout the legal review and comment period that will run from July 12th through August the 31st, also shared with you last month. And then Jordan and I will be attending some additional training with the National Resource and Charter School Resource Center this week. We'll have 2 days of additional training, and she and I are looking forward to that. And then finally, last Thursday evening, I attended a presentation by Jumpstart Test Prep, which is a company founded and located in Brookhaven. This company believes, and I have to agree with them after seeing their results, that the product allows for students to see the most improvement on their ACT scores in the least amount of time. And they shared some impressive statistics on the student gains and that they're making on their ACT as a result of the program. And I'm really, really grateful and appreciative of Ms. Whittier's invitation to join them in Brookhaven. It was really a great opportunity for me to see not only a really amazing product, but also to connect with former colleagues of mine and state representatives. So really, Ms. Whittier, thank you again for the invitation. I really enjoyed my time down there last Thursday evening. So that ends my report, and I am happy to take any questions anybody may have.
Okay, if there are no questions, we'll move on to the finance report. Denise?
Hey, everybody. Don't have a lot to report today. Just wanted to let you know that we're about finished with FY21. We still have about 6 weeks we can pay bills, but the only items that I think we still have outstanding are 2 vendor invoices that we have not yet received. Those are encumbered against our general funds. So once we pay those, we'll have used every dime of our general funds, not even a penny left over. And we've used the rest of the money from our special funds. Y'all have already approved the FY22 budget. You did that in your last meeting. We have not yet had any bills come in against that. So there's nothing to report in your packet from FY22. And then the last thing I wanted to let you know is we're in the process of preparing the FY23 budget request. We'll have to submit that to IHL since our appropriation is through them. And what Dr. Carmencherry and I are talking about is submitting the exact same request or close to the request we did last year on the general fund, ask for them to restore us to where we were originally instead of the reduced general fund. And then we'll look at whether or not we need to increase FY23 spending authority on the special funds since there's more schools and additional staff and things this year. So we'll be working on that, and that will be submitted August 1st. That's all I have.
Yeah, we can't hear y'all, guys.
Okay, thank you. The first committee up is the Applications Committee. Do we have a report from the Applications Committee? Carolyn, are you still there? I think maybe she needs to unmute her.
Can you hear me?
There you go, there you go, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. This is Carolyn Willis, and I'm reporting on behalf of the Applications Committee. We met on July 7th to discuss the 2021 Call for Quality School Cycle 2 Threshold Quality Review findings. The recommendations were presented by School Works to approve moving into stage 3 the following applicants: Columbus Leadership Academy, Instant Impact Global Prep, Jackson Prep Academy, Relentless Preparatory Academy, and Relentless Academy of Technology Excellence. Resilience Academy of Technology Excellence. After the meeting, the committee voted to move forward to stage 3, the application cycle. The committee respectfully requests the full board consider support and approval of this action during today's new business. That is all I have to report.
We need to act on this now or wait?
During new business.
Okay. Thank you. That's really good news. We have all 5 of these schools going forward to the next stage. Thank you so much to all the members of the committee. Performance and Accountability Committee, do we have an update from the Basis Policy Research folks?
Yes, we do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Jennifer here. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to report that a meeting was held on June to the framework based on that from the on a motion from Mr. Billingsley, second voted to draft performance framework.
Maybe the rest of this, the rest of the
The introduction letter, guidance statement, and performance report template. The committee respectfully requests the full board consider and support approval for this action during today's new business. And then we have an update. We should have an update from Basis at this time.
Yes, thank you, Ms.
Right.
Hi, can folks hear me? This is Erin Marwa from Basis.
I can hear you. Jennifer, I heard pieces of what you were saying, but I'm assuming the upshot is that Basis has a report that we need to listen to. Is that correct? Is it? Okay. All right. I'm with you. It was just breaking up. I don't think it's you. I think somewhere going on all this, but I just wanted to make sure I was understanding where we are, but sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for letting us join your meeting. I'm joined here by my colleague, Dr. Anna Nicotera from BASIS as well. I'll just briefly share my screen with folks. Okay, can everyone see our cover slide? And is my audio okay for folks?
Yeah, Erin, I think you're great.
Okay.
I can hear it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. So as we round the corner on this project, Anna and I wanted to just circle back to the driving principles that we've leaned on throughout the course of this work. You know, our goal has always been to strengthen both the transparency and the rigor of the board's framework, as well as the intervention ladder, while still meeting your local needs and context. So these key principles here, which we feel are in alignment with the board's principles, you know, have really guided the work over the past 6 months. So just to remind folks what those principles are, what we've done is try to create a performance framework that truly enhances the board's professional judgment, but certainly not replaces it. We want to promote transparency for all stakeholders. And by stakeholders, we mean board staff, board members, schools, but also community members as well. Key for us is also to ease the administrative burden on schools. The calculation of a performance framework is a huge effort each year. And so we've tried to be very thoughtful in terms of the data collection approach and process to really protect time for schools to have time for teaching and learning. And then finally, our goal is to make this framework flexible, particularly as the local education landscape changes in Mississippi. So for example, things like state assessments and other things that change over time. So this work started now over 6 months ago. And this timeline here shows the assortment of stakeholder engagement activities that we've offered to the community throughout this time. So we've been engaged in a number of activities through a variety of formats over the past 6 months. And what we've tried to do is hold a formal engagement process every month throughout the course of the project. So as you can see here, starting back in January, we kicked off this work with listening. And so we held one-on-one interviews with all charter school leaders across the sector, as well as school representatives as well. February, March, and April, we held 3 virtual community stakeholder meetings. They were each focused on a specific section of the framework in order to have dedicated discussion about each of those sections, since they're all quite different. Anna and I have provided opportunity to provide written feedback. And we've also had some really great individual personal telephone conversations with stakeholders as well. In April, we presented at the Performance and Accountability Committee meeting. We also joined a board meeting back in April. And we're very happy to be welcomed here today to this meeting. So throughout these 6 months, that's resulted in 3 rounds of stakeholder feedback for revisions. So Anna and I, wanted to talk through a couple of those key revisions that we've made throughout those 3 rounds, as well as the general approach that we've taken as well. So as I mentioned, each section of the performance framework is very different. It's broken up into academic, organizational, and financial sections. And because each section is different, it really warrants a different and specific approach to the revision process. So Anna and I wanted to be transparent and share with you our approach in alignment with the board's approach in terms of how we've addressed the revisions and then the subsequent changes based on stakeholder feedback. So in terms of the academic framework, we built the framework to be aligned to, but at the same time, not limited by measures that are defined by the Mississippi Charter School Law. Really critically, we included additional measures that cover the full grade span, the full span of grade levels that are offered by a school. The previous performance framework didn't have enough measure coverage. So for example, schools that only offer lower grades, such as kindergarten, first grade, weren't able to really have true performance information through the performance framework because those measures were simply not relevant to those schools at that time. So we mentioned easing the administrative burden for schools. And to that end, we are using only publicly available data that can be easily used in calculations. And then finally, the academic framework, it provides information about your charter schools and how they're performing relative to the geographic district in which they're located. So in terms of the financial performance framework, our key approach here is to align the measures, metrics, and cut scores to industry standards. So right now, those industry standards are defined primarily by the National Association of Charter School Authorizers. Folks may know of that organization as NACSA, and they published their core performance framework now almost a decade ago. And that core resource is really meant to serve as the hallmark for the authorizing field. The financial metrics that are included in NACSA's version were informed by model authorizer practices, charter school lending experts, and other financial experts across the field. And what we do see just generally across the national landscape in terms of both authorizer type, authorizer size, and also capacity is there's actually quite a lot of consensus in terms of the set of financial performance measures that are used, as well as targets. So what we did primarily for the board is really just to bring the financial performance measures into alignment with the vast majority of what authorizers are doing across the field right now. So what that ended up with is really a combination of both financial performance metrics, right? So things that tell you about the financial health of a school, as well as financial management practices. So these are things like audit findings. And we felt that based on stakeholder feedback, that this will provide folks with a much more comprehensive picture of financial health. So our approach to the organizational framework, it's very complex. It's primarily based on compliance obligations that a school must meet. And so to that end, we wanted the framework to include only the minimum compliance requirements that are required in two sources. So one is the Mississippi Charter School Law, and the second is the board's revised charter school contract. So that said, even the minimum requirements are quite extensive in scope. So by restricting it just to those minimum requirements, again, we're not adding additional measures onto the organizational framework, again, to protect school autonomy and time for teaching and learning. One key thing to note with our approach We chose not to include measures that evaluate things such as classroom teaching, classroom management, or even governance practices beyond legal requirements, simply because we felt that those are very input focused. And our driving principle is for this to be output focused and really to protect school autonomy. We feel strongly that elements like assessing classroom management and teaching is very much outside the purview of an authorizer and should absolutely be kept within the school's purview. So in terms of the intervention ladder policy, we did not make dramatic revisions to the board's current intervention policy. What we did do critically is to align it to the revised charter school contract, simply because this is not meant to be a very overly prescriptive policy. But what it does do is it's meant to provide just general guidelines for how the board may respond to certain academic or financial or organizational performance that doesn't meet the board's expectations. What it also does is it provides a bit more clarity and detail around general conditions that may cause the board to intervene. And then it also includes examples of possible types of board actions that may follow. Again, it's meant to preserve professional judgment of authorizing staff as well as board members. And again, it's not intended to be an overly prescriptive policy. So as we mentioned, we went through 3 rounds of revisions based on stakeholder feedback. And Anna and I took all the feedback very seriously. And we were able to make some key revisions based on that feedback, which we're happy to share with you here. And at the same time, there were some requests that we could not meet just based on the approach and philosophy that we took to this project. But in terms of the things that we did revise, we wanted to walk through a couple of key things here. So we did add measures to capture performance in all grades served by the charter school. So this gets at the coverage issue, right, for schools that are serving younger grades. So things like kindergarten readiness measure was added, as well as a school selected growth measure from all levels, from all grade levels. We also added measures to give charter schools the opportunity as well as the autonomy to show how their students are learning in their schools beyond just state assessments. So we included a school selected growth measure. So this means that a school can select benchmark assessments like NWEA MAP or STAR or any other board approved benchmark assessment to demonstrate their growth success. And then we also included a school specific indicator. We did make this optional per stakeholder feedback. And what this does, it allows the school to show even another strategy for how their students are demonstrating learning beyond state assessments. So the school specific indicator could, for example, include a school climate survey. It could explore student or parent satisfaction, or it could even explore things like social emotional competencies as well. And then finally, schools will be compared to district schools of the same type as the charter school and not the entire district to create a closer apples to apples comparison. So what that means is a charter elementary school will only be compared to a district elementary school in the same district in which the charter school is located. So it's that geographic district designation. So the approach to using the district comparison also aligns with the approach of the annual report that is required to be submitted annually to the legislature, where the annual report must also include a comparison of the performance of charter schools students with the performance of schools in their geographic district. So we found alignment in terms of the interests of the legislature on that front. I'll also say that the approach of using a district comparison when looking at academic performance, it's not unprecedented across the authorizing field. So authorizers like the Tennessee Department of Education, as well as the Georgia State Charter School Commission, use district comparison measures for evaluating academic performance. And some authorizers use a combination of both comparison measures as well as absolute measures. So authorizers like the Washington State Charter School Commission employs that approach as a state authorizer as well. So key financial revisions based on feedback we received. I think most important is we did add the financial management practice measures. We moved those from the organizational framework over to the financial framework. So these include measures such as audit findings that a school would receive, as well as timely financial reporting on things like quarterly financial reports, as well as the audit. And we do agree that having all of those measures collected under one framework will provide a more complete picture of a school's financial health. We did revise the CUS scores to align with NACSA as the industry standard, as we mentioned. And then we also tried to provide flexibility through some of the CUS scores based on the age of a school. So schools that are operating in their first and second year, for example, may have a lower threshold for meeting, for example, a day's cash on hand requirement than a school that is operating in year 3 and beyond and may have more experience and more revenue accumulated. And then finally, key organizational revisions. So a big piece of feedback that we had all the way back in January was that the organizational framework was not clear in terms of the sources and evidence that authorizing staff would be using to actually evaluate organizational compliance. So what we really tried to do was increase transparency by listing out every single data source as well as evidence that staff will be using to evaluate each measure. We also revised the rating language to accommodate scenarios where compliance issues may not be remedied promptly. So we do acknowledge, certain complexities when it comes to compliance for schools and wanted to offer flexibility there as well. And then finally, we tried to clarify calculation strategies for a couple of performance measures within the framework. So those included the underserved student percentage requirement, which is a statutory requirement, and also the recurrent enrollment rate, as well as the attendance measure, which we're considering to be a chronic absenteeism. So looking ahead, there are some very important steps that will take place over the next few months. These steps will allow the board, staff, schools, and also us to engage in really critical due diligence and take the necessary time and energy to engage with the framework and to make adjustments as needed. So we wanted to walk through a couple of key steps that will take place over the next couple of months and into next year. So from today through August 31st, as Dr. Karmachari mentioned, will be legal review and comment period. September 13th is a tentative final adoption pending board approval of the performance framework and the intervention ladder. And then looking forward, actually just a couple of months from now, so fall 2021, this is a very, very critical step in this process, and it's what we're calling a trial run. We've shared this with the performance and accountability committee folks, and just want to emphasize that this is a period of time where staff will be working in close collaboration with all schools to basically do a trial run calculation of all three performance frameworks. So academic, organizational, and financial. They'll be using the available data that comes out in fall 2021. So it will really be the first time we're taking the framework for a test run on current data. And we will make necessary adjustments as needed based on the results of that trial run. And then looking forward to next year, so fall 2022, we're tentatively anticipating the full implementation of the revised performance framework at that time. So that means the annual performance framework report that will be given to schools, I believe it's required by September 30th of each year. So by September 30th of 2022, that annual performance report will be calculated under the new and revised framework. So Anna and I are either happy to answer questions from folks either now or also after public comment.
Muted. Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate the recap and the information that you gave us today, and I'm sure that there are going to be lots of. I'm sorry, is someone else trying to talk? I can't tell. Okay, I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions that are going to come up during this process. We will vote today later on in the meeting during new business about to go ahead and move these draft framework provisions on to the next step. So I appreciate all the work you've done and look forward to working with you to finish it up.
I have a question.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question at the appropriate time.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, I received an email from, I got it this morning. I mean, it may have come in Friday, but I just saw it. From Elise Marciello at Empower. Did everybody get this? I mangled her name, but everybody know what I'm talking about?
No.
Does anybody?
Are you saying Elise?
Yes.
From Empower?
Yeah.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
We don't know the email.
I didn't see the email, but I know who you're talking about.
Marcelino, is that how you pronounce it?
Marcelino, yes.
Marcelino, okay. It looked like at some point Elise had some correspondence with Aaron. Is that right, Aaron? Policy?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and you responded to her issues, I assume. It looks like it's an email from her to you. And she had 5 bullet points of things that she asked you to relook at.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Did you all right. Does everybody have that email?
No.
All right.
No.
Well, let me first start off by, I don't like getting emails that everybody y'all don't get to. So I noticed that none of y'all were CC'd on this. And so from now on, I'd like to start forwarding these to somebody and somebody can get them out to everybody else because I don't,
Mr. Baker, I'd be happy to do that. Jordan or I, either one would be happy when you get those kind of emails. Mr. Hinton has been generous and kind enough to do the very same thing. If you get information like that, we're happy to share it with the other board members.
yeah, I'm not offended by it. It doesn't really help if everybody doesn't get it, right? So
Right.
I apologize because I took the weekend off, so I didn't really look at much this weekend. But it is coming to you right now, Lisa, so you can have it. So,
okay, thank you.
the upshot, Aaron, as I understand it, is that there were, she's actually referring to an email that she sent you, or she included an email that she sent you on June the 4th. And it says, thank you for making several important revisions in response to the feedback. However, I still think there's still further to go. And she's got like 8 or 10 bullet points here, 6 or 8 bullet points. Did you consider those in your presentation here today?
Yes, we did. So just to clarify, I've been in direct correspondence with Elise Marcelino twice. We offered a written feedback period as part of our stakeholder engagement process. I did respond to her both times, and Anna and I both reviewed the feedback that she provided through both emails throughout our process.
Okay.
In terms of the 8 specific bullet points that she lays out, I would have to refresh my memory on what those are.
No, I'm not, and believe me, Aaron, this is not a cross-examination. I'm just,
sure.
You got an email, you responded to it.
We did, and I can assure you that her feedback, along with other stakeholder feedback, was addressed through this most recent revision of the framework, but not every single request that she made was granted.
Okay, and it wouldn't be fair to you to start reading her email of Friday and saying, hey, oh, by the way, what about this? What about this? I've sent that email to Lisa. If you believe, based on what you're doing, and I don't have the authority to tell you to do this, but you may want to look at this and decide whether or not you want to respond to any of this additional stuff that came up, or is in this email of July 9th. But I mean, there's nothing critical in here. She's just asking for example, the performance, organizational, and financial frameworks are used to evaluate charter schools for renewal. We believe the requirements of charter schools should be straightforward and achievable. The contracts they enter into should not change mid-charter, and they should not be forced to hit moving targets. I believe you received a much more detailed documentation from Rachel Cantor with Mississippi First. So apparently there's somebody else that's kind of involved, Ms. Cantor, so you've coordinated with her?
Yeah, so we did
not coordinated, but you've listened to what she's had to say.
We have. So we've received extensive written documentation from Rachel Cantor via direct email. Anna and I have both reviewed her correspondence as well as Elise's. Yeah, I would just appreciate being directly sent any correspondence going forward, and that way I can properly address these questions.
Absolutely, and I think that's only fair to you. And you've done a great job. I enjoyed your presentation, and I think you're on. I think you're on it. And I don't know if this needs to be addressed or not. I'm not telling you to. I'm just telling you I received it, and you may want to look at that. What is the fundamental, if you could? Because it seems like they're all kind of circling the same thing. What is the basic fundamental issue with Empower and Mississippi First and everything? If you could just kind of crystallize that into a kind of a summary for me. They feel like we're too difficult, too stringent, not enough. What is their focus point?
Sure. So I think, some of the key pieces of feedback really circled around the academic framework. And I think the difference is, I think circle around a difference in philosophy and approach to the framework. One specific thing I can talk about is the district comparison, which I mentioned. So in the current revised framework that we're proposing that charter schools are compared to the district schools in which they're located, again, by school type. I think some stakeholders feel, perhaps folks from Mississippi First and Empower, that an absolute comparison would perhaps be fairer. And what I mean by an absolute comparison is just a single bar that every single charter school needs to meet, instead of being compared to a different entity. So it's a different strategy for how measurement is approached. Both of them have pros and cons, and authorizers across the field use both approaches, both absolute performance measurement and also comparative. We ultimately felt that using the district comparison was in line with the legislative intent of the Mississippi Charter School Law, as well as aligns with the philosophy of things like the annual report that I mentioned, and just meeting the needs and the interests of the legislature. So again, it's, I think, a philosophical approach in terms of how BASIS approach the construction of the measurement approach.
Okay.
May I say something? Mark?
Yeah, oh, yes, ma'am, please. I mean,
Okay. I'm so glad you brought this up because I have received several emails, long, complicated emails from both of those entities that you've referred to. And it's a little concerning to me that it seems that they're picking and choosing to whom they're sending these emails. They're not coming to all of us. They're coming to us as individuals. And would it be possible, Lisa, for us to make sure that these entities understand that we have, you know, a group, that we are a committee, but we also have a director, and that these emails need to go through you and not be sent to us as individuals, because like Mark said, we don't know what to do with them. So
Jennifer, I'm
I
sorry.
would certainly, go ahead, Kimberly.
Well, I just want to say I've been listening to Mark and Aaron and Jennifer and everyone. And I also noted that Elise and Rachel are both on this call. And we're going to open this up to public comment, I think, very soon. And I think this is a good discussion time for them to, and I believe that we've always been fair with open the public comment to hear out everyone. And so I look forward to that. But I really feel strongly that all of these concerns need to be filtered through our director and then presented to the board, and so that we have all information and everyone's fully informed. And I yield.
agree with that.
Jean, were you getting ready to say something before I respond? Okay. Thank you all for your comments, and Jennifer, for your comments, and Aaron for yours as well. I will say, on behalf of this entire process, we began with stakeholder engagement interviews, and there were a couple of people that declined to participate in the interview for whatever that reason was, and I won't pretend to speak on their behalf or put words in their mouth. But I can assure you that every single bit of information and feedback that we've received has gone through Anna and or Aaron. However, there has been as you well know, several situations where emails bypassed us directly and unbeknownst to us went to board members individually. So Jennifer, with your recommendation, if that's the process the board would elect to follow, I would certainly appreciate that as well, so that you guys get the information collectively, not individually, and I'm able to review that prior to it landing in a board member's email box, and then a board member having to call me and ask, who is this person? I don't know this person. Is it even worth reading their email? And so if that's the position the board would like to take, I can certainly follow that, or any other protocol that you would prefer us to follow. But I do want to echo the sentiments of the committee members who have been through this process since January. Aaron and Anna have done a yeoman's job of responding to and allowing for public comment and written feedback, as well as even an hour-long post-committee meeting conversation with a principal. And so I just applaud them for their work and their willingness to listen and hear, and in fact make about 45 different responses and revisions to the feedback that they've received throughout the past 6 months. So thank you to you guys both for your tenacity, your hard work, and your commitment to addressing the feedback as you see fit through the board's and the committee's work.
I think that this is a good time to point out that this process isn't over. All we're going to do today is vote on whether to accept the draft revisions and move them forward. We still have a comment period taking place until August 31st before we try to finalize the document and vote on it to move it into the trial run starting in the fall of this year. So there's still plenty of time for everyone who's interested in how this framework is going to end up looking to make their suggestions. And I hope everyone will. I think that I only speak for myself. Somebody wants to send me an email, but I'm going to just forward it to the executive director. And that's what I hope all the members are going to do, because that way we know everybody's working off the same piece of paper. I think that I'm not as interested in who makes the changes as I am in how the framework finally is implemented and how it works. I don't care whose idea it is. If somebody has a good idea, that's fine. Let's implement it and put it in there. So I'd like for us to be able to move forward now that everybody has, as of last Friday, everyone has the completed draft revision to the framework. We're going to vote on that in a few minutes. Assuming that we vote to move it forward, everyone will have everything they need to go through the process in the next 6 to 7 weeks and come up with what we can vote on in September as a final product. Does anyone else have any questions or any additional comments?
I just wanted to point out, I'm not offended that I got the email. I'm okay with getting an email. I got no problem with it. The content's fine. It's a point of view. I get all that. I want to make sure that the other members get it. And so it was I should have forwarded that on. I didn't. I would just request that if somebody's going to communicate with me about the business of the committee, that they either CC you or send it to others. Of course, it's hard to tell people that don't know, but that's my preference. And I'll just do better. Make sure I forward that on so y'all can circulate it around.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to the public comment period. Who wants to go first?
We received one request for public comment, and that's from Ms. Johnson from Clarksdale Collegiate.
Okay, try to keep your comments to 5 minutes if you can, and go ahead.
I will try my best. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda Johnson. I trust that you can hear me okay. I'm the Executive Director of Clarksdale Collegiate Public Charter School, Mississippi's first rural charter school. It is a pleasure speaking with you today via Zoom. I'm jealous of all of you in the boardroom. I wish I could be there, but today is our first day of professional development. So I am needed here in Clarksville, but I'm excited to present to you today. Today I'm representing not only myself, but the charter organization leaders of nearly every charter school in the state, including Tamala Boyd Shaw, LaFleur Legacy, John Ripka of Republic Schools, and DRT Scott of Ambition Prep. Together we represent 6 of the 7 currently operating charter schools, and every Mississippi charter school that is a part of the Charter School Growth Fund, which is a nationally recognized portfolio of high quality charter schools. So my reason for addressing you today is threefold. As autonomous schools, we do not have the same relationship with the board as traditional public schools do with the State Board of Education. Under the law, we are authorized by the board, but not operated or controlled by the board or the board staff in the same way that traditional district schools would be. This is the most essential premise of charter schools, that we are co-equal partners in education who are granted autonomy in exchange for high levels of accountability. When the charter law passed in 2013, the legislature was very clearly expressed in the charter schools to represent a new way of providing public education. Over the course of the last year, the board has added numerous new members who have not yet had the opportunity to interact directly with any of us. So now that the board has nominated members for each seat, we wanted to be proactive in establishing a positive working relationship with each of you. We actually realized recently that, if I believe I'm correct, that the board hasn't, individual members haven't been physically inside of schools. I heard Dr. Karmasharia saying that that visit was coming up, and we want to make sure that the board that is tasked with making extremely important decisions affecting the daily lives of our teams and our scholars have the context of charter schools and the work that we do directly from the folks who are on the ground, and that includes school visits. We hope that through direct conversation between us and you, that we can provide you with the perspective of Mississippi Charter Network leaders with clarity and transparency. We believe regular direct communication with the board in a public meeting can deepen the board's understanding of what happens in charter schools and could be a win-win for us all. We also believe that the public will benefit from greater levels of transparency about the issues facing charter schools as we work to serve our families. We hope these public reports will help the public understand charter schools better. So essentially, we're proposing that we have an opportunity to present to you in a formal way, in a way that is included in the agenda as a standing agenda item. And so we thought today during public comment, we would give you a sample of what that report might be in the future. So going forward, if it's on the agenda or if it needs to stay in public comment, we will do that. But going forward, there'll be 3 pieces of each report. The first section will focus on charter school successes since the previous report, and we have lots to share. The second section will explain what our schools are focusing on and maybe some challenges that we have until the next board meeting and the next time we see you. And then the final section will report any information and perspectives we believe the board needs to know or consider as you make important decisions. We hope to share our excitement and agreement with policies that we believe align with the vision and work of our schools, as well as thoughts and ideas to improve the work and the decisions of the board. We will share concerns with policies or actions of the board when necessary. We will also produce a written document based on this information so that you can have a record of our reports. And I will make sure to share that with you, to everyone after this report. To that end, I want to share some of the successes from the 2020-2021 school year from our schools. So Clarksville Collegiate, we will start the 2021-22 school year in a new and newly renovated facility. We have added over 20,000 square feet to our campus and are excited to welcome 450 scholars in K through 5th grade. This over $7 million project was backed by Civic Builders, Hope Enterprises, and Charter School Growth Fund. Clarksville Collegiate also received $850,000 from Walton Family Foundation and $30,000 from the Lewis Calder Foundation for aspects of this project. LaFleur Legacy Academy is preparing to open its doors to 240 scholars grades 6 and 7. Supporting their expansion is the Charter School Growth Fund, who recently selected Dr. Tamala Boyd Shaw as a member of its seed cohort, which comes with a financial contribution of $375,000, at least that much. For public schools, they recently held their kindergarten graduation. It was a wonderful event. And in the report, you will get a link to the video. So if you want to see some of the smiles and excitement from some of the scholars at Republic, definitely want to check that out. Lastly, Ambition Prep is currently renovating 80,000 square feet to ensure their scholars have a safe and joyful facility. The school will open its doors to 330 students in grades K through 3 on August 2nd, coming up really soon. This month, all of our schools are focused on getting the pieces in place to have a strong start to the school year. Each of our schools has weeks of planned professional development with in-person classes beginning in late July or early August. For LaFleur Legacy, which has been virtual all through their first year, that will mean it will be their first year operating in person. And we all have lots of stuff going on at the school level. Throughout the month of August, we'll be working to smooth out beginning of the school issues that crop up. And we expect additional challenges this year as we try to adjust to the disruption of last year. Because this is our first report, and hopefully the first of many, we have decided to focus more on our introduction than any input or concerns regarding the work of the board or the staff. However, we do have continued concerns about the performance framework, and we look forward to the administrative procedures, public comment process to share them with you in writing. We also have concerns about the intervention letter, which we were provided prior to the meeting. We plan to return in September and every subsequent board meeting to continue our dialogue on these and other points. Again, our goal is to develop a strong, collaborative working relationship directly with the board, which is legally empowered to make policy decisions in alignment with national best practices for charter school authorizing. We hope to see each of you at your convenience in our schools over the course of the next year so that you can see for yourselves the work our teachers and our scholars do every single day. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. We do hope that you will consider making this type of report a continued aspect of the board meeting. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Holly, good.
Holly just needs to clarify something.
Talking to hear. You're spoken enough.
So for point of clarification, the performance framework isn't necessarily going out for the Administrative Procedures Act, but it is open for public comment from now until August 31st. So it's not going to go through that formal APA process, but we do want to hear from y'all. We want to hear from those that this does affect. So if you do have comments, as stated earlier, please make sure to email them to the board, to Dr. Kate, so that it can be shared with everybody on the board, as well as with Era and Anna. Can you? Sure. So under Mississippi law, the question was, why is it going out for formal APA? Under Mississippi law, there has to be authority for Administrative Procedures Act to go into place. And currently, there are no specific statutes that say the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board shall adopt rules and regulations for their performance framework. So the performance framework is never going out for that formal process, but by law, they are required to have a performance framework. And so it does allow, I think this is a benefit, it does allow for the board to make easier changes, not following the APA process, but it's not as formal. But there is a formal process for those public comments to be made. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And
so
thank
just
you,
to clarify, we can't, just to clarify, it's really hard to hear. So I caught some of that, but not all of that. It sounds like it's going for public comment, but not the administrative procedure. I didn't hear everything.
yeah, you don't have to talk directly.
That's correct. I'll look at the microphone instead of the screen. That's correct. It does go out for public comment, but through the board, not through the Administrative Procedures Act. I think y'all understood the gist of it, but it's just that the law doesn't require it to go through APA, only that the board have a performance framework and that they are open for public comment and suggestions from the stakeholders as they have been throughout this whole process.
Did that answer your question, Amanda?
It did. It definitely answered the question, and we will definitely engage in public comment, and we hope that the weight of our comments will be considered by the committee and the board.
Thank you. That's the only person that was scheduled to speak during the public comment period. So we'll close the public comment period and move on to the discussion items. And as a wild coincidence, the first item on the discussion is to talk about the public comment period. I asked Dr. Carmen Shire to put this on the agenda for us to discuss today because I agree with a lot of what Amanda Johnson just said as far as the schools having an opportunity to communicate directly to the board, whether it's at a board meeting. I mean, they already have ways to communicate directly to board members, as Mark and Jennifer and others already know. But I can't think of anything bad about having the schools communicate directly to the board during a meeting. Now, there are a number of ways that we can do this. One would be to, as Amanda suggested, to add it as a standing item to the agenda. My concern about this, one of my concerns, and I'll shut up and let everyone else talk in a minute. I don't think it's a good idea for one person to speak for the other schools. Okay, yeah, I think it's great for each school to have a chance to talk directly to the board, but I would rather that school do their own talking. That's just me. I'd rather it be one school per person. I also I think that the bylaws may have to have some adjustment if we want to have the public comment section of our meeting considered for this type of reports from the schools. That's fine. We'll just have to modify the bylaws such that the public comment does not have to refer to anything that's on the agenda. We can open that up a little bit. It would be just as easy to just add reports from the school. We have a chair report, we have executive director report, we have committee reports. We could just as easily have reports from each school. Sometimes the school would have a report, sometimes they may not. But I don't think it would. I don't think it would add too much time to the meetings, and I think the information that we get out of it, just like we got today, would be good information. With that, I'd like to open that up to the rest of the board members to discuss whether we want to do something like this and how we would do it. Dr. Pegg, do you have any ideas?
I don't. I just provided you guys some backup material in your packet based on the recent action from the bylaw committee and Mr. Billingsley's request to have this as a discussion item today. So each of you have in your backup material the recent action by the bylaw committee, which was Mr. B, Ms. Willis, and Ms. Remack on March 22nd. You have the information from the committee reports from the April 12th meeting, and so the action that was taken as a result of the committee's review of the bylaws, section 8.1 and 8.2. I think the only significant change made in that, if I remember correctly, was the language around a may and a shall in one area, and in the other area, they gave the board more flexibility. Instead of shall, they may. And then maybe the reference to the 8.1 had originally in there that the board, or that anything that was submitted had to be on an action item on the agenda. 8.2 left that out and said only an agenda item, and the committee went back and added in an action item, so that that everybody who did make public comment could have an opportunity to speak on an action item during the board meeting. So if I'm remembering all that and articulating that correctly, that is in your board packet for reference.
So if I could, just to be clear on what Bill said and what Lisa said, basically the recommendation is that we don't have a representative of any school come speak for us, and if in fact a school is interested in speaking on an action item, they could get on the agenda like anyone else, or alternatively provide public comment. Is that correct?
That's correct, either under 8.1 or 8.2 for public testimony or just but submission of data, views, or arguments. And that has been traditionally the way that the schools or the general public have reported out to the board.
All right.
So that was for you guys in backup in response to Mr. B's request here.
And I didn't, Mark, I didn't suggest that we not allow the schools to address the board.
No. I get that.
I think it's just the opposite. I think we should.
Okay. My 2 cents. You asked for my 2 cents. My 2 cents are I don't
sir.
believe that we should have a standing anybody come speak. 2, I don't want to keep placeholder positions for every school to come speak at every meeting, or this will take hours and hours and days. If it's important enough for them to speak and it's an action item or whatever, then fine. If they want to come provide public comment, that's fine. But if we keep a placeholder spot for every school, they're going to feel compelled to come speak to us. And, if they're out doing their job, they don't necessarily need to take the time to come speak with us. They need to be doing what they're doing. And so it becomes a time drag on them and us. So that's where I see it.
Does anyone else have an opinion?
I do. I think the public part is sufficient. And can you hear me? I think that every school should have an opportunity, if they have something to say to the committee. I'm not comfortable with having a spokesperson for all of the schools. I think they have leaders who can speak for themselves. But that's just my opinion.
Does anyone else have a comment?
Just a point of clarification. I mean, there is nothing preventing in the public comment section them individually coming and giving a report if they chose to do so. Is that accurate? As long as it was, hopefully limited to 5 minutes.
I think that the way that the language reads is that they.
We lost you. Yep. Y'all are muted, by the way. We can't hear what y'all are saying.
Can you hear me now, Don?
Yes, I can.
Okay. The current language in the bylaws is that any interested person can be provided an opportunity to speak through the open comment process, but it has to be on an agenda item. So in order to open it up to where schools could get on the public comment period to talk about something that's not on the agenda, we would have to modify that part of the bylaws, which I don't have a problem with. I think it would be a very simple modification. I don't know that, I'm not suggesting that we change the 5-minute time frame. I think that's plenty of time for anyone to make a public comment. To answer your question, yes, schools can speak during the public comment period, but the way the bylaws are written right now, it has to be something that's on the agenda.
And that was what was changed when the committee met and y'all made that change. That's what was changed in there, that it had to be an agenda item,
right.
Action item, not necessarily agenda.
Okay, action item. That makes it even harder because there are fewer action items than there are agenda items. So if we want to open it up, we have to modify that part a little bit.
Mr. Billingsley, this is Carolyn Willis.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm happy anytime that our charter schools choose to engage with our board. I'm going to make a suggestion. I don't know if it's appropriate to make it this time, but I suggest that we take this up under the bylaws committee. Otherwise, this goes to another concern that I have, that we would be using the time that our board members come together to do the business of the board, and that it would, in essence, take away from that process. And so my suggestion would be that we take this up as part of the bylaws committee and then come back to the full board with a suggestion.
I think that's a good idea. Does anyone have any objection to that? Are there board members that have an objection to what Ms. Willis just said? If not, then I will work with Dr. Carmen-Chire, and we will convene a meeting of the bylaws committee between now and the next board meeting, and we will have a recommendation for the board at that time. In the meantime, if there are schools that want to try to speak on the public comment period in the next meeting, go ahead and do just like you've always done, and we'll try to get you on the agenda.
Oh, they will get.
Yes. Okay, the next item that I asked Dr. Carmen-Chire to put on is there's actually a couple of them that have to do with evaluations. I've been on public boards before, and I'm sure a lot of you have too, where the board actually does a self-evaluation. That is not a requirement of this board, but it's something that we can do if we want to. So I would like for us to start the process of considering if we want to do that and how we will do it. Secondly, and related, it's an evaluation. We are required to do an evaluation of the executive director. She and I have already been working together to try to come up with something, and she's done a real good job of presenting to me with what she has been using so far. Oh, okay, you all have that. So I'd like for us to be prepared to go into executive session for personnel purposes in the next meeting to talk about how we will proceed with these two evaluative processes. Are there any objections to us putting that on the agenda for the next meeting? Okay, now let's move on to the.
Make a comment there.
Oh, sure.
They're back up. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can't remember everything I said.
Okay. Am I on mute? Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Okay. All right,
Did you hear
Carly.
everything that I said a minute ago?
yes.
Yeah, just so
Okay.
with respect to item A under, item B under the discussion items, the board evaluation. Mr. Billingsley had mentioned that to me a couple of times about the board evaluation. In your backup material, you have reference to that. There is not, as he stated, a statutory requirement for the board to conduct a self-evaluation. There is, however, in the CSP, a requirement that we do conduct under activities 3.1 and 3.2, an evaluation of our work to ensure that we are aligned to the NACS's best practices in terms of authorizer evaluation practices and policies. We did engage in that work. You'll remember that we contracted with NACSA to do that evaluation. I believe Erin was a part of that work at that time when she was still with NACSA. And they reviewed two of our policies and procedures and practices at that time. They reviewed partially our performance framework. They looked also at our renewal process during that work and made recommendations. So you're looking at two different options. You're looking at a self-evaluation of your practices individually as board members under maybe Robert's rules or just organizational board practices in general, how you make policy and so forth, and or this particular practice that will be ongoing because it is a requirement under the CSP grant. So I wanted you to be not confuse the two of those, and that Mr. Billingsley's request is separate from the NACSA recommendation of the self-evaluation under NACSA and the CSP.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the new business action items. Dr. Kay?
Yes, under new business for item A, you have consideration of the approval with MOU. This is a standing memorandum of understanding that we have between IHL, and this is simply because our funding flows through them, and we need to have a mechanism in place to ensure that Denise can get our bills paid. So that is the purpose of this particular MOU, and with your permission and action, we can move forward with that annual activity.
Any questions? Let's have a motion for approval, please.
I so move. Ellen Willis.
Second?
I'll second that, Kimberly.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion is passed. The memorandum of understanding with IHL is approved. Dr. Carmenshire?
Item B is to consider the approval of the FY22 office lease with the Department of Finance, and that is so that we can operate here at the Robert E. Lee Building in our suite, and that is a zero cost to the board. So we
Motion.
just a formality, if you all would consider approval of that.
Motion.
Motion?
Second,
Thank you, Mark. Second?
Kimberly.
Kimberly, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. The office lease is approved. Next item.
Okay, item C is to consider the approval of a quote for the annual report. As you know, the state law requires us to present an annual report to the legislature each year. That report is due on before September 30th of the year. It will look very different this year, and so instead of engaging with Bellwether, who does the propensity score matching and comparison of student population and performance between the schools located in Jackson and JPS, we will just be simply asking the schools, and I've already done so, to submit a narrative on their successes, on their challenges during the year of COVID. This will be a representative year of 2020 presented to the legislature, and then we'll have a page for us and where we're headed and just some general information. We've reached out for 2 quotes. We have a quote that's presented to you, not to exceed $2,000 from Dallas Printing to do the entire piece of this work, including the artwork, as well as the printing and binding for us. So with your approval, I'd like to present that quote for consideration.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hinton. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The printing quote is approved. Next item.
Item D is to consider the approval of site visits and/or school tours for 21-22. What we're really asking, I'm sorry. Okay. What we're really asking here is for the board to consider waiving per the school year and the current framework requirement, waiving those site visits and school tours for the first semester of each school so that we can give them time to get back to traditional school work and looking at children eye-to-eye, knee-to-knee instead of via Zoom. So we want to give them some time to readjust, and we ask the board to consider waiving those requirements as we transition to a new framework potentially for the following year and allow them time to transition back to a more normal school setting. So with your approval, we would ask for consideration of this particular item.
Does this automatically, does this mean that the visits and school tours would automatically be postponed into the next semester?
Next semester, yes.
Okay, have you talked to the schools about it? Are they okay with it?
I have not talked with the schools about whether or not they would prefer not to have a site visit this fall. If any of the schools are interested in having a formal site visit this fall, I'm certainly happy to work around that. But this is a part of our current framework. And so just with respect to the schools and the challenges that they faced last year and the challenges they may have going forward, I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to give them some relief for the fall site visits that are required under our current framework.
I think there's a distinction to be made here. The visits that Dr. Carmachai are talking about are required visits under our framework. The visits that came up earlier in the meeting are where the board member, are unofficial visits, where the board members go out and visit the schools. That's what I want to make sure that if we decide to go forward with those, that we're not constrained by what we're talking about right now. I want to make sure everybody understands that what we're talking about putting off into the first semester of the 2022 calendar year are the official site visits that are required under the framework.
Yes, and actually what we're going to, if you see in your board packet on the far right column, what we would really like to do is just conduct in the second semester a school tour and desk audit for each school.
That's even better. Okay, does everybody understand the item that we're about to vote on? Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll give the motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes, and those framework visits will be postponed, modified, as stated.
Thanks.
Next item.
Item E is to consider the approval of the draft performance framework and supporting documents to include the intervention ladder, the companion guidance, the statement of assurance, and the annual performance report template. You all have access to that in your backup material as well. We've discussed that at length today, and I would ask the board to consider the approval of the draft framework, understanding that this will be ongoing and not fully implemented until fall of 2022.
Any questions?
I make the motion to accept.
Thank you. And second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and the draft performance framework and supporting documents are approved as written, and we'll move on. Item S.
The final item here is to consider the approval of the 2021 Call for Quality Schools Stage 2 Threshold Quality Review Findings. You heard the report earlier from the committee chair. We have 5 schools that are eligible to move forward into Stage 3 and complete the capacity interview process. You have Columbus Leadership Academy, Instant Impact Global Prep, Jackson Leadership Academy, Relentless Preparatory Academy, and Resilience Academy of Technology Excellence. These 5 schools are all located throughout the school, throughout the state, everywhere from Natchez to Columbus. And I believe at this point in time, we would entertain a motion, and you have a committee chair that will do that individually.
Okay.
Set up individually.
Okay. Carolyn?
Yes.
Carolyn, do you have a motion?
Yeah, in order to confirm the eligibility and completeness of applications and advance them to Stage 3 of the evaluation process, I would like to make the following motion on behalf of the application committee. And Dr. Camatera, these have to be done separately, correct? Dr. Kay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We'll do them individually.
Okay. So I move to deem Columbus Leadership Academy complete and eligible to move forward to Stage 3 of the 2021 Call for Quality Schools application cycle.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Kimberly.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Columbus Leadership Academy is approved. Next.
I move to deem Instant Impact Global Prep complete and eligible to move forward to stage 3 of the 2021 Call for Quality School application cycle.
And a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. The motion passes. Next.
I move to deem Jackson Leadership Academy complete and eligible to move forward to stage 3 of the Quality School application cycle.
A second, please.
A second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. The next.
I move to deem Relentless Preparatory Academy as complete and eligible to move forward to stage 3 of the 2021 Call for Quality School request for application cycle.
Second.
A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next.
I move to deem Resilience Academy of Technology Excellence as complete and eligible to move forward to stage 3 of the 2021 Call for Quality School application cycle.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All of the schools move forward to the next phase. Okay, do we have an executive session today? We do not. The next meeting is on September 13th, 2021. I sincerely hope we can all be in the same room for that one. I realize how hard it is, especially if we have more of this scourge going through the state, but maybe we'll be able to gather up in the same room. It sure makes a lot of, I feel less like Philip Gunn when I'm in the room with everybody else. So I appreciate everybody's attendance today, and we'll see you in September.
Thanks all.
Hey, before we go, can I ask, there's a number of comments inside of the chat, specifically Ms. Marcelino asked about email addresses, and just so that we respond that can come to Dr. K and do that. We also have Amanda Johnson has given a couple of links. Ms. Johnson, if you would just forward those links to Dr. Carmachara, and get her to send those out to us, and we can do it there, because they're going to disappear once this Zoom goes away.
Okay, so
I'm not sure.
Mr. Henn, so are you asking us to save, I'm sorry, Mark, this was for you guys to save the chat for y'all so we could capture everything? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, either that we have those links forwarded to us by email, and then I was just letting y'all know that there were some comments in the chat about asking for our email address information, and whether we want that to come out to us individually or just to y'all and let y'all forward it to us, which I think would probably be preferable.
Yeah, I think you, as a board, probably need to make a decision on that. I know Mark brought that up early, so however you guys want to run through that particular process of communication, I'm fine to do whichever you prefer.
To me, it just seems a lot easier for it to come to you and then have you forward it back out to us.
I agree.
That way
I think that's fine. I will encourage everyone who has any communication with the board to forward everything to Dr. Carmachira first. And if you want to send to the board members as a CC, I don't have a problem with that, but I'd like for Dr. Carmachira to also be on the email.
Yes.
We don't really have any authority to tell someone that they have to do that, but I hope they will.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
Kimberly, everybody, you probably want to get everybody's commitment to that or disagreement.
is everybody okay with that? Try to get everybody to email through. And I think we've already agreed that when we get emails separate, we will forward them to Dr. Carmachira.
Right.
Anybody
That's
have
my
any
plan.
questions or disagreement with that?
Yeah, one of the problems for me is if it comes directly to me from an unknown source, we've got pretty tight security at my company as to what gets to me. And I know her emails will get to me, but somebody just randomly sending me something may not ever, it may go straight to junk and I'll never see it.
And you know, I think that's fine. I know there's plenty of emails that go to my junk drawer too. Again, I think if the people who are on the call would please send their correspondence through Dr. Carmachira to the board, I promise that everybody on the board will be able to see what you've sent. So if everyone will do that, can you fix Jean's?
I'm trying to help her. It's on my
okay.
And I do have a note here from Rachel that says I'll respond to board members' requests for a response from me in writing since it was not possible to respond via public comment. So when she does, she'll send that to me.
That's fine.
Is that what I mean? That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay, so I can.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Jean, I think the problem is on your end, but are you okay with the email thing we've been talking about? Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no other discussion that we need to have, we'll go ahead and adjourn until September. Thank you all for your attendance and all your work that you do for these kids.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.
And a second. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Jennifer.